Howdy, everyone. In today's bonus episode, we sit down with outgoing Republican Texas State Representative Kyle Biedermann. We get his thoughts on all sorts of issues facing the Texas legislature. We discuss the lack of transparency and involvement by state lawmakers themselves in the state budget process. We talk about corporate welfare, government spending, and property taxes. It's a jam-packed episode. Stay tuned. Taxpayer Talks is brought to you by Texans for Fiscal Responsibility, and it's only made possible from generous donations from listeners like you. If you want to support our work, you can visit texastaxpayers.com/donate to make a tax-deductible contribution today. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special episode of Taxpayer Talks today. We have a very special guest, our board member, Kyle Biedermann, with us today. My name is Tim Harden. I'm president of Texans for Fiscal Responsibility. We're here with our executive director, Jeremy Kitchen. How you doing today, Jeremy?
Howdy. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, hey, Kyle, good to have you on the show today. Obviously, you're a newly minted TFR board member and soon to be former representative in the Texas House, serving quite a few terms. What have you been up to, Kyle? What's going on with you?
Well, good morning, Tim and Jeremy, and I'm just very honored to be part of TFR and being able to give some of my insights into being a legislator for 6 years or 3 sessions. So this is exciting for me. And actually, I'm sitting in my Ace Hardware office. Actually, this is my wife's chair because my desk, I can't even barely get to my desk. So you can see all my wife's stuff behind me. But yeah, all the memorabilia from 6 years, and you saying former state rep, it's kind of hard in a way to step down on your own. And because once you're at that level, it's hard to give it up. And that's why we have such a problem with our legislators, because they're there so long, they don't want to give it up. It becomes part of their life. And that whole ego and power and just the entitlement they seem to get. It's just, it's crazy. And both you guys are in the legislature with me. I served with both you guys.
Absolutely.
And as chief of staffs. And so you saw all these people that dropped, they come in there saying big words and big stuff. And you just watch them fall, and it's just really sad. But no, I'm really happy. I'm getting back to my business, which has been great. And I just opened a brand new Ace Hardware store in Harper, the huge town of Harper, Texas, population 3,000, I guess, or something like that. Actually, there's only one major business in Harper, Texas. It's Family Dollar, and there's Family Dollars all over the state. But that's the only real major business there. And so I bought a feed store, didn't even know about it. It just happened, and added a full hardware store. In fact, Thursday, Friday, Saturday this week is our grand opening. So I'm real excited about that. And then I also bought the liquor store next door. So I own a liquor store now. Oh my gosh, crazy time since I left the legislature, but I'm still involved in things. And every day I'm handling my constituents' needs and also just trying to keep up on what's going on. And what a crazy time in this world, crazy time in the United States and crazy time in Texas too. And appreciate you guys being there on the front to give people the information. I don't want to take all the time talking, but you know what? The major question I get from people here in my stores, remember, I talk to thousands of people a week, thousands. It's regular people coming in the store. And their main question is, how do we get information about what's really going on in Texas and Texas politics? And I give them the same answer every time. Texas for Fiscal Responsibility will give you that information, and you got to sign up. So one of the things I'll be working on with you guys, I'll be promoting it here in my store. And again, looking forward to talking about a couple issues here today.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure to have you. For those who do pay attention to our index, Kyle has been a taxpayer champion every single session that he has served. And I do want to say, to your point, I respect the legislators that are able to lay it down on their own because, everyone, especially, conservative Republicans, when they come in, everyone supports term limits, right? Until they get into office. Then all of a sudden they get, 3, 4, 5 terms. Like, what happened to those term limits, So a massive respect for you, Kyle. We're happy to have you on the program. Let's get right into it. We have launched our Texas Prosperity Plan, and one of the major tenets of that is the elimination of property taxes. For the most part, this has massive support. We've had really good feedback. Of course, some hard questions talking about school funding and things like that. But the question I want to ask you is based on your experience in the legislature and kind of what other legislators have said behind the scenes. We want to know, is it possible to do this? Is it possible to eliminate property taxes in Texas?
Well, I believe there is, but we got to really first talk about property taxes. You've got your county and your city property taxes. Those we've controlled and put a cap on, and that we've done a great job. It also gives the people the information on what their county and city is doing on property taxes based on the tax rate. So we've done a good job when it comes to city and county taxes. The problem is school taxes. That's where the biggest problem is. And the only way that we're going to be able to control the school property taxes is by controlling spending. And so there's 2 ways to control spending. You control spending by the school system, how much they spend, but also by the state. And so with Texas, being a state that's growing, we continually have an increase in our budget, and very rarely do we ever have a deficit. We usually have a surplus. So the whole, I can't remember, the Texas property plan, whatever, what do you guys call it? What do you call that plan?
Prosperity plan. Yeah.
Prosperity plan. I'm not a legislator anymore, so I don't have all those words anymore. But the prosperity plan, that's the only way. And that way we take the surplus, and of course, part of it's going to have to go to the growth of the state of Texas. I mean, I hate to say this, part of it has to. What about just cutting the growth of spending in Texas? But we'll get away from that, and we'll just say, okay, we've spent a certain level already. All right, we'll keep that level and increase it by population inflation. And then take the majority of what's left and pay down property taxes. The school side. Again, we're only talking about the school side and M&O most likely to begin with. So people need to realize property taxes, city and county, which we already are controlling through the legislature. It is the school side that has no control whatsoever. And even though there was a cap of some type, it didn't change, because if they just increase their spending, it doesn't matter. And here's one other point. I'm concerned that even if we did do the prosperity property tax plan, the schools are just going to increase their spending. So we're going to have to just keep increasing spending more surplus. So unless we control the growth of our public schools, we're in trouble no matter what.
It'll be interesting to see. It's an interesting point you make about the schools, right? Because Tim and I have talked several times about the concern that you've got the last, let's say, 2 years, right? Coming through the COVID pandemic and everything, you actually have school enrollment down, right, across the state by varying metrics, right, depending on where you're at, but ultimately down. And the assumption is that public schools, public education generally, will be a larger budget item, right, as we go into the next session. And to your point, how do we fund that, right? It's kind of a myriad of things, but it's certainly something that is out of control. We start from the premise as a part of the prosperity plan, right, and that, like, as when it comes to spending, right? And certainly taxation and spending are absolutely intertwined. When it comes to spending, they've already kind of gotten away from what was population and inflation, right? Like we've been under that since about 2015. But to be frank with you, we are exponentially beyond what that was starting from 20 years ago, right? And when we go around the state and we talk to folks, we always ask the question, do you believe government is too big? And of course, the response, right, as you can imagine, is yes. And so then the follow-on question is, well, then why do we continue to allow it to grow at all by any metric, right? What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, that's basically what I was saying earlier, because, we're starting at the premise, okay, let's start from here. But we've allowed the growth of government to be just way too big already. And, you know what the pressures are like at the Capitol. So as a legislator and as staff members, I mean, they're coming and they put so much pressure on you. Oh my gosh, don't you feel bad about this group? Or don't you feel bad about the teachers or the retired teachers? Or then this pension plan? Or, we really got to help this area because they had a big flood, and then you got this and you got this. And my gosh, they have it all set up, of all these things you have to spend on. And if you don't, you're a bad person. But, where does all that come from? It comes from these special interest groups and the lobby groups who are getting paid by people who want more money. And so the legislators then, and in order to appease them and of course to be part of the club and to get more donations and to be liked, they have dinners every night and everything else they get from the lobbyists, they're going to vote for that crap. And then we continue to just grow government. So that's exactly how it works. And it's so out of control. It's hard to stop the momentum of the bureaucracy and the growth of bureaucracy.
Yeah, I think one thing probably all of us saw, in that building is the extreme amount of attention that's given to corporate interests, to lobbies, to special interests, like you said. But yet homeowners, the ones who are actually suffering under this, right? Who are being priced out of their homes in Texas, they are asked to tighten the belt. Hey, tighten the belt. We're not going to go get raises right now. Most people aren't getting raises. Inflation is crushing people. But yet every biennium, it seems like all of these state agencies and all of these corporate welfare programs, well, they just get to increase their budgets. They get raises, but homeowners don't, which kind of brings me to my next question, something that I know you've dealt with at least for a few sessions, which is this Chapter 313 abatement program. And so this last go round, it was actually, it failed to renew. So it's supposed to renew it's supposed to expire, in December of this year. And the crazy thing about these is both parties, both Democrat and Republican parties, openly oppose Chapter 313 abatements. Yet we have Speaker Dave Phelan, who has come out publicly and said that he is seeking to renew this in another form. And so the question is, it is the largest corporate welfare program in Texas. It's $11 billion. It's massive. We give money and abatements to corporations that routinely silence conservatives. So the question is, yet again, kind of appealing to your experience in the legislature, if both parties oppose this, and as conservatives, we should be opposing all corporate welfare, why then are we renewing it? Why is Dade coming out and saying, well, we're going to try and renew this in a different form? What are your thoughts there, Kyle?
Well, it's quite obvious, and it comes right from what I just said earlier. He's getting paid. I mean, he's got all that pressure from all the money come from all those corporate sponsors, and he wants more money so he can help other rhinos win and all this stuff to build up his coffers and everything else. I mean, it's all about money. It's all about money and power. And but getting back to the lobbyist situation, it's not really their fault. I mean, both of you guys know that your bosses, as well as me, said, I'll take money from anyone. I don't care, because it's not going to change what I do. I mean, I'm going to vote and fight the same way, whether I get money from people I don't like or that I don't agree with. But that's not the point or the case with most people. And so with Dade, he wants that program because that's a big part of his support. And you got to remember, in the Capitol, you get the most power, or you're most powerful when you appeal to both parties. And so you get money from both parties, or donors that are, Democrat, Republican, or liberal or conservative. They're not going to tell you what they are, but they're either liberal or conservative, basically. and you get money from both sides, then you're going to be powerful, just like Greg Abbott. Abbott wins because the Democrats know he's not going to do anything, and the Republicans, donors, hope he's going to do something. And so he gets it from both sides, and he just raises a ton of money. And that's the whole status quo that happens in DC, but it happens right here in Texas. 313, it was fun. I remember your boss, Tim, actually went to the back mic and told Representative Murphy, when he was up there with the bill, he pointed out that 313 was on both the Democrat and the Republican platforms. And it was like nobody heard it. And it was just unbelievable. I mean, it was right on the House floor. It was spoken when the bill was being presented. And remember that year we were able, I guess that was the year when we actually stopped it, but it wasn't going to end till this year. So, or was that last session? I can't remember, or the session before when that bill didn't, actually we killed that bill, it didn't pass. And then last session, we actually killed the 313 to a certain time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to help me out. Okay. But that 313 thing, it's coming back because these legislators are getting paid, they're getting paid by these corporations that want the subsidies.
It should be noted too, because you brought up the author of the bill that died, right, which was Jim Murphy, who of course was the Republican caucus chairman, who was going against his own party's platform, right? I mean, you can't make that stuff up. It just kind of goes to show you whose priorities are prioritized, right, when it comes to the legislature. I do have a question, Kyle. You brought up earlier. Obviously, congratulations on your business ventures and expanding, bringing it back to kind of this property tax as a general concept. I mean, obviously, as a business owner, right, as a homeowner, right, you pay your own share of property taxes down there, this kind of ever increasing burden. Politically, do you think that there's an appetite, right? Do you think that the pressure has built up so much now to where lawmakers can no longer kind of do what y'all have been doing when it comes to property taxes? Do you think that they in fact have to do something this go around, or has not enough political pressure been brought to bear, especially on Republican lawmakers?
Well, they're all going to say that, they all hear it back in their district, and in Austin, they don't talk about it. It all comes down to leadership. If governor, lieutenant governor, and the speaker want to do something true about property taxes and not just increase the deduction for your homestead, I mean, what a joke. What a total slap in the face to say, oh man, we did this to help reduce your property taxes. I mean, just it's a total joke. It's unbelievable, but it's not the lawmakers. That's what happened. It's really not the lawmakers. It is leadership. And if leadership wants it, just like constitutional carry, you guys were involved in constitutional carry a lot more than I was when I was there because of your bosses. And it went nowhere. And you knew it was going nowhere. You knew it had no chance. This last session, it was like, you can't stop it. It didn't matter what we did. You weren't going to stop con carry because leadership wanted it. So that's really how it is. I don't want to say it's the lawmakers that really talk about property taxes. They can just do whatever they're told by leadership.
It's interesting you bring up the leadership point. Only I literally just wrote about this, right? To the credit of the governor, to the credit of the lieutenant governor, they've at least both talked about using some amount, right, of the budget surplus to buy down the school portion of the property tax. I could not find anywhere, could be corrected, but could not find anywhere that Republican leadership in the House, specifically, of course, Speaker Phelan, but even some of his quote unquote lieutenants, right, saying anything about using any portion of the surplus. In fact, the only thing I found, obviously, and we've written about this a few times, is that there were some House interim charges for the House Ways and Means Committee to use funds, the ARPA funding, right? The remaining ARPA funding that still exists, but nothing about using the $27 billion surplus. Why do you think that is in the House, that there at least seems to be a hang up? And to be clear, like, I'm not necessarily giving credit before, like, putting the cart before the horse. We'll see if the legislature actually does something when it comes to buying down school M&O. But when it comes to leadership, you've got one leg of that stool that is yet to say anything about it.
Well, and that's all you need, so, Lieutenant Governor can, say, oh man, I'm going to do all this stuff. I'm going to do all this stuff and I'm going to pass it in the Senate, when he knows the House is not going to pass it, or vice versa. There's cover for Lieutenant Governor by the Speaker. Speaker will pass it, and then knowing that Lieutenant Governor is going to kill it, or if the governor is going to veto it. So they've got all the ways to be able to make yourself look good in one of the houses. But the thing is, they'll come up with, oh my gosh, we had too much else to spend on. We could only do this much, but look what we're doing for you. And it's the same old bait and switch, and then making excuses and just doing just enough to say, hey, now I can put it on my flyer that we did property tax relief. And that's just how it's going to happen. And this session, I don't know. You're right, because I haven't heard much in the House. And Patrick is already coming down to certain dollar amounts, so what, 3 billion, big freaking deal. Then you say, okay, then we'll take another 5 billion. Well, what is it going to change your property taxes by, $100 when we're paying thousands and thousands? The biggest problem though is, investment property or commercial property. I don't even have a homestead. Personally, I do not even own a homestead, because I didn't want to lie and say one of my rent houses is my homestead. I just can't do that. So every one of my properties is just, they max it every year as much as they can. In fact, I just bought a piece of property to move the store. And that was the main reason I didn't run, is because I bought a piece of property to move my existing store, because I've been leasing for 37 years. And I found a piece of property, spent a fortune here in Fredericksburg, but it's the last really good corner in town that's zone commercial. And the thing went up, 400% in 1 year.
Insanity.
Actually, more than 400%. I mean, the property taxes went up $35,000. So I think I'm paying like $45,000 for just raw land, nothing on it, not a single bit of infrastructure on this property. $45,000, and it went up $35,000 from the year before. So I don't know what that percentage is. It's just crazy. Yeah. And there's nothing there. Wait till I put a building on it.
Wow.
So that is, remember, I don't know, you guys remember also we were on the floor. In fact, one of the Democrats, I can't remember which one it was. I think it was TMF. Is that it? TMF, right? Mm-hmm. He came out with like a cap on commercial and investment property. We have a cap for homestead, but there's no cap whatsoever. And you talk about these budgets getting out of hand for these municipalities, as well as the schools, because they're just ripping you on commercial and investment property at the expense of so many of us. It's crazy. So there's a number of things that need to be looked at. But again, I hope and pray that we actually don't just put a little exemption increase in, that we actually do something long term. An exemption increase, they call it long term, but shoot, your value of your property is going to go up more than that in the next year or two anyway, so it's gone. So we need a long term fix, and we also need to control spending. And with what's going on with the schools right now, there might even be school education freedom coming up.
Yeah.
And boy, look at that. I mean, the schools are crying for money right now, and then you put that in play, and then you try to reduce property tax. Oh my gosh. I mean, that makes it exciting if we actually have the discussion instead of just you and I and other conservatives having the discussion.
Yeah, I like the point that you made about leadership, and what many taxpayers and voters don't understand is the dynamics and the power that each one of these three positions, the big three, right? The Speaker of the House, the Lieutenant Governor, and the Governor. But what we have said in past articles is one of these three is not like the other, right? And what I mean is Abbott specifically has the sole power to call an unlimited number of special sessions. He has the bully pulpit, and he has the ability to come out and press lawmakers to force them to get something done. We've seen it happen over and over again. He called 3 special sessions this last go round for election integrity and other things, right? And so when he comes out with the state of the state, he will list out his legislative priorities. And all he has to say is, if you don't pass major property tax reform, if we don't, he came out in his debate and literally said, my goal is to eliminate school property taxes so people can actually own their home. We have been reminding people of that, and we're going to continue to remind people of that. And so that was a strong statement. We have to hold our elected officials accountable. And so we expect to see that on his legislative priorities. And we want to remind people that if he, in fact, really does believe that, and that wasn't just campaign rhetoric, that he actually can force the legislature to pass this and to eliminate school property taxes by simply saying, if you don't, I'm going to keep calling special sessions forever, all the way until the next legislative session, if you guys don't get this done. So you're absolutely right that strong leadership, and I would say specifically, yeah, the Speaker of the House has a role to play, the Lieutenant Governor has a role to play, but only Abbott wields that power. And so that is one of the special things about being Texas governor is you can actually force things to happen. And when he takes a strong stance and presses the legislature, it's surprising how quickly things will get done. But want to transition to the budget in general. And so another part of our plan is what we're calling a frozen budget or a no growth budget. This comes from a number of conversations with a few economists, some from TPPF and others. And essentially, we passed a very good conservative reform this last go around, which we praised. It was awesome. I believe it was Senator Kelly Hancock is the one who carried the bill. And essentially, it was kind of the final piece to fully limit the budget to population plus inflation growth. This is actually the issue that TFR was started on back in 2006. It only took about 15 years to actually get done. So it actually got done. And so there's praise where praise should be. So we're happy. The problem, though, is after passing that groundbreaking legislation, now we have, because of the federal government, specifically the Federal Reserve and bad monetary policy, inflation is at a 40-year high. And so we touched the 9% and we've been hanging around 8%. And most of the economists we've talked to are estimating that if we stayed under that cap this next legislative session, in a biennium over 2 years, we're looking at probably a 15% increase in the budget, which is massive when you're talking about, I think it's with federal funds, I think we're around $260 billion. And so that would put us on pace to likely be over $300 billion. In 2000, I believe this would put us on pace to about triple our budget in the last 20 years. And so to the point earlier that Jeremy and you both were talking about the government being too big, I guess the question is, with inflation as high as it is, would we consider the state budget growing 15% to be a conservative metric, or should we strive for something more this next go round?
Well, what happens, and Comptroller Hager has said it, we have the surplus, but a lot of it's because of inflation. Just like sales at my store, my Ace store, or other retailers or other businesses, sales may be up, but if you're not up more than 10% or 8%, then you're not up. It's just inflation, So I think that our budget, I think that we need to keep that. Just because inflation is so high, we have a certain surplus. So when inflation goes down, we still have a surplus. If we do have a surplus, we just got to spend that surplus and give it back to the people. Period. I mean, we can't be, playing games with, we got this and this, so we can't do this and this, but that's what they're going to do. That's what the leadership's going to do. They come up with all sorts of excuses for not taking care of the people and giving their money back. So I don't know if that answered your question, but it goes both ways, whether inflation's going up or down. And population inflation, even if we used it as a high number, like you're talking about, the inflation part, we still have a huge surplus on top of it. So, just let's give the people their money back, and let's cut spending at the Capitol, and let's actually do what's right, what we campaign on, and not forget about it when we get to Austin.
Curious, Kyle, in your 3 legislative sessions, obviously you didn't serve, to my knowledge at least, you didn't serve on the House Appropriations Committee. And so what is your thought? We've heard from different lawmakers, right? And different for either former staff, right, or people that have kind of been plugged into the process for decades, right, that especially as of recent sessions, the appropriations process, I'm using air quotes, right, has become really anything but, right? Most lawmakers aren't involved in it. It's kind of dictated by just a few people behind the scenes, right? And then lawmakers, they happen to see the bill. Obviously, it's the one of the largest bills that y'all vote on, and you don't really know, like, outside of getting kind of the bullet points, if you will, from either various organizations or what have you, you don't really know what it is you're voting on. And you kind of get pressured, as you talked about earlier, to vote either a certain way on the overall bill or on specific amendments and that sort of stuff. What are your thoughts on just the overall process, right? As a lawmaker, right, as taxpayers, we want our lawmakers to we're the 9th largest economy in the world, right? We want our lawmakers to know about the legislation they're in fact voting on, be involved, especially in the kind of appropriations process. Do you kind of agree with maybe what some of the other folks have said, is that the process itself is maybe not the most transparent? It's not the most inviting for other lawmakers. What do you feel about that?
Well, it's everything's just baked. Everything's baked in before you even get to session. And you're right, it's actually a 4-year process. And I believe your organization put out a really good kind of like, commercial or cartoony thing that explained the budget process. I mean, it was very clear. The thing is already done. It's been done for a while. And there's only a few people involved. And those people are the ones that are talking to all the agencies. In fact, we tried to put a bill in that would allow the legislature to be able to be in these hearings and question these agencies about the money they're asking for. But that's not what happens. Basically, the governor, if he really wants some tough talk, will say, okay, agencies, you got to cut 4%. Remember, you guys were there when that was the thing. Well, what do you mean 4%? That's nothing. I mean, you could cut a whole lot more than 4%, and they were just crying over 4%. And what do? They cut the good stuff, the good people, or whatever it is, at the expense of all the bad stuff they leave in there, because they know they'll gain it back. And it's just, it's ridiculous. It's a 4-year process. By the time we get to session, if the legislators are not able to actually question these agencies, well, it's like the Sunset Commission. This session, we're going to do TCEQ and some of those other environmental type agencies, which is that was what I spent most of my time on, because I live in the Hill Country and I spent most of my time there. Plus, I had the most senior policy expert in the country, basically working in my office. And I just wanted to be on the committee. And I actually wrote a letter to the speaker asking, can I be on the committee? I don't get any money from any of these guys, because that's a big moneymaker if you're on that Sunset Commission, because they're paying you to not change anything. And I said, I know all this stuff. I've got an expert. I've been putting bills out for 3 sessions. I'm a great fit for this committee. I can really help. And of course, I'm never going to put on, just like appropriations. They put on Matt Schaefer, Representative Schaefer, and I'm grateful about that. I was about the only one that could ever get any information from. And I would watch some of those hearings with Representative Schaefer, and he asked some good questions. But by the time he was asking the question, it was already done. So, the budget process needs to be obviously more transparent. I'm actually in favor of possibly having just a special session every other year. So you go to session, and then the next January or February, we go back just for budget. And you're there for 1 month for one issue, or anything else that has to be cleaned up. Hopefully they don't add too much stuff. And let the legislature be involved in the budget process before it gets to session. But, if we don't change something, they've got it all. They've got the whole thing taken care of.
Yeah, it's kind of a joke when you look behind the scenes at budget night. It's 12 hours straight. And, when you talk to legislators, we talked to 𝗧𝗫𝗣𝗑 about this as well. It's a big dog and pony show. It's all been baked in. They've decided already what's going to happen, and whatever happens, even if something does get put on, right? Even if you throw riders in there or amend. We know it's going to be in a different form of the Senate. We know it's going to go to Conference Committee, and it's going to do whatever they want, right? And so I love the idea of taking a separate special session to deal with the budget, and you asking for legislators to be involved. One thing that is funny that a lot of people don't realize is right now in the interim, they're just kind of wrapping up the legislative action or appropriation requests, LARs. And the funny thing is, pretty much no people on appropriations, none of the legislators themselves are even there. It's all staffers that are in these legislative appropriation request hearings, talking to agencies that are receiving sometimes billions of dollars. And it's, just staffers, UT students that are in there. They're not asking any hard questions. And the Appropriations Committee doesn't even bother to show up on these things. And so what would be the harm in having legislators be involved in the process, even those outside of the appropriations hearing, and giving y'all time to go through the budget that is, by the way, like this thick, and you're expected to go through the whole thing in a matter of days, and then vote on this massive thing that, as Jeremy said earlier, is the budget for the 9th largest economy in the entire world. It's insanity that we don't have more interaction, and it's concerning that it seems as though the power and the crafting of the budget is becoming more and more centralized in the hands of just a few people.
And again, that's all where the power comes from. The leadership controls all that, and of course, who is controlling leadership? Obviously, the money, and the money's coming from outside to make sure that they get their stuff in that budget. And then, as Jeremy said, the lack of transparency to not only legislators, but certainly to the people whose money is being spent. I mean, the whole thing is just a sham. It's a total sham. And it's very, very unfortunate. And then as legislators, we go to budget night, as you said, and it's a total joke. We prepare for it for weeks. And oh man, we're going to be there till 2 a.m. We're going to be there till 6 a.m. And all it is a show. It's just a total show, and it all gets changed the next day. And then, there is just no benefit to it whatsoever, zero benefit. And it's a total joke. But we get to use some of it in campaigns where you said, look what this person did, or they didn't vote for this. So we've tried to find a benefit for budget night, besides the fact that there's no benefit to affecting the budget. Just a benefit for getting a vote, maybe, that you can use it, against somebody or for somebody. And so, that's not the way it should be.
Well, Jeremy, you got anything else, man?
No, I don't think so. We cover a heck of a lot. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I think that is our time. Hey, we appreciate you being with us, Kyle. Of course, we want to remind everybody on all this budget stuff. This is why TFR exists. We exist to provide transparency and to help people understand this incredibly complex issue. We're extremely happy to have you on the board and your expertise and the legislature just kind of adding to what we already have. So we will look forward to seeing you again soon. We certainly will be having you on probably in the next month or so. Congratulations on all your business ventures, and we will talk to you soon, Kyle. Thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you very much. And again, it's really nice to be able to give a little insight on what happens in the pink dome, and especially to do it with you guys who I served with. And, but your organization, again, as I said in the beginning, is one of the only ones that you're going to get the real truth at. And keep putting that stuff out. You guys have really made it a lot clearer for people on how things work, especially on some of this complicated stuff. So God bless you guys. God bless Texas. In this election, man, we got to really do well. So everyone get out and vote for sure.
Amen. Get out and vote, y'all. Thank you, Kyle. We will see you
For
soon.
even more content, follow us on social media at Texas Taxpayers on Facebook and Instagram, at Texas_taxpayers on Twitter. Subscribe to the Fiscal Note, our weekly email jam-packed full of information important to Texas taxpayers at texastaxpayers.com/subscribe. And then make sure to check out our Texas Prosperity Plan, texastaxpayers.com/TPP. Thanks. Hey, you made it to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon so that way you're notified next time we post a video and update to the channel. Thanks again.